In this lesson, we're going to model the bumper of our RC car. Alright, so let's go ahead and create this geometry that we need for the bumper. And looking at it, it looks to be mostly cylindrical shaped. So I could use a cylinder piece of geometry to create that and just kind of delete some faces and create the pieces that are actually going to connect to the frame. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So let's go to our Create panel and create a cylinder, and we're going to go to our front view to do this. So I'm going to create a cylinder, and I'm going to get it pretty close to about the radius that I see of that bumper there. And I'm going to pull that up, and it looks like maybe about 7.5 is going to be a good radius. And then also let's make sure that we get our height. So I'm going to left click on that. And let's right click to end our cylinder creation process, and let's make sure that this is centered up on our car. So I'm going to actually change my pivot point of this cylinder, and I'm going to hit center to object, and then I'm going to set the position in my Y to 0, so that way I know it's centered on the car. And then I can adjust my radius and also my height as needed. Let me hit Control Z on that, because if I adjust my height, notice what it's going to do here. If I pull this up, my pivot point is no longer centered there. So that's one thing that you want to watch out for. So instead of using my height here, I'm just going to convert it to an editable poly and then just scale it outward along the Y. So just a couple of things to watch out for whenever you are working with pivot points and you need a specific pivot point for your object. So now let's go ahead and get rid of the polygons that we don't necessarily need on the ends, and then let's determine what polygons we'll need for the geometry we see in our reference image. So it looks like I can get rid of these polygons right here. Oops, try that one more time there. And I can just simply delete those. So those should be pretty good. Now I have a little bit of a thickness here to my bumper, so this isn't really going to work. And another thing that I'm noticing here, if I go to my front view, is that this is much larger. So let's go ahead and scale this down just a little bit. And we may have to come in and do a little bit of reshaping. So I'm just going to put that right here along the center and go to vertex mode. And I'll just reshape along my reference image. So sometimes primitives can get us really close, and then we may have to just do some slight modifications as needed. So I'm going to hit F3 just to make sure that I have that last vertex there. I'm going to pull that down just a little bit, and there we go. Now one thing that I do notice really quickly is that I've got a flat piece right here, and I'm going to need 2 segments to extrude backward. So let's grab that front edge right here, and let's just use chamfer on that. Let me go to my front view for this. I'm going to take this down and pull that back up there and just try to get that set exactly where I need it and hit OK. So on vertex mode, let's go ahead and make sure that that is set to the top, and I'm going to pull that up and try to get that as straight as possible right there. We could also use our scale tool just to make sure that that is perfectly straight up and down right there. Okay, so now that I have that set, let's go ahead and get our thickness that we need for this piece of geometry. So I'm going to use what's called the shell modifier to do this. So shell is exactly what it says it's going to do. It's going to take that flat geometry and create a shell out of that. So it extrudes it out and then also creates the sides that we need for that, making it one solid piece. So this is a really helpful modifier here. Now looking at this in my front view, it's extruded outward, so my outer amount is set to 1. Let me take that back down to 0 and then take my inner amount up. And let's go ahead and just set that to 1. Now that we have that set, we could go ahead and keep our modifier and use those procedural modeling techniques that we had talked about, or I could just go ahead and convert it to an editable poly and just be done with it. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that for right now. So now my bumper is complete, except I need the arms to come out and connect to my frame. So I'm going to need some segments for that. So I'm going to select the edges right down the middle there. So select that ring of edges, and let's use connect, and I'm going to make sure that I set my connect amount up to 2. Okay, so that's going to split that into thirds, and with those 2 edges selected, I'm going to use chamfer one more time, and I'm going to make sure that my amount is a little bit lower than that. I want to try to square it off a little bit more, so maybe 0.5 be a good value for us. and I'll hit OK. So now I have these polygons across the back, and it might be a little hard to get to from here, but you can see exactly which ones I need there, those two squares. And I'm going to extrude those out, okay, and I'm just going to extrude those out a little bit, and I'm going to hit OK on that. I'm going to go to my front view just to see this, and I'm going to hit F3. So now what I need it to do is I need to extrude downward into the frame itself. So to do that, I could go ahead and extrude out and then lower it down, but that's going to create kind of an odd shape for that. Let me show you what I mean by that. So if I extrude this, that's all well and good. I can pull it out and then push it down, but you can see how it's kind of skewing that edge. So what you'd probably want to do before you extrude is go ahead and take this bottom set of vertices and kind of get that polygon to angle toward where you want it to go. And then whenever you extrude that, it goes down and keeps that thickness that it had before. So I'm just going to basically just bury that into the frame, the front part of the frame there. And let's close that. And let's hit F3 and let's take a look at what we have right now. So here, our bumper is in place, and we've got that attached to our frame. You can make any adjustments to that. You can also take these polygons across the front and extrude that or bevel it, create a little bit of a thickness across that front there, just to kind of break up that shape a little bit, and just hit OK on that. So there we have our bumper, and we can go ahead and we can change its color and material, and then also apply our turbo smooth and sub D modeling techniques to that, just to make sure it's nice and smooth. I'm going to wait to do that. We'll take care of that during some cleanup and things like that. And also another thing that I just noticed was the connector pieces here. You might want to take the lower part of that and just lower that down. So you'll have to go to Edit and Group, and let's ungroup that. Let's see if we can just select that one piece there. And we'll have to do that on the other side as well. So Edit, Group, Ungroup, and let's go to Line. We're going to hold Yes, and I'm going to take that set of vertices right there across the bottom. Just pull that straight down to where it intersects with the frame. Go back to Editable Poly. Should be okay. So no issues there. Do the same thing here. So Line, hold Yes, and vertex mode, hitting 1 on the keyboard to do that, and dropping that down. And there we go. So you can go ahead and regroup those or leave them ungrouped. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and leave them ungrouped. I don't necessarily need to do that at this point. So we have our bumper set, and now in our next lesson, we're going to take care of the shell cover. So I'm going to teach you how to borrow geometry from what we've already created to give you a pretty good head start on creating a detailed piece like this that conforms to the car shell here. So I'll see you in the next lesson.